17. Bones and Shadows, Misbehaving. Honestly, though, said Valco, if anyone's actually a dragon, it's my grandmother, not you. They were sitting at Maya's dining room table, which was covered at the moment with maps, pencils, and Valco's geometry paraphernalia, rulers, compasses. Dreadful, dreadful noises floated in from the other room. Pauline Vian had come over to practice her scales. "No clenching," Maya's mother called from the kitchen. "Gently, gently, Pauline. Big, lovely tone." Valco had put a red dot on the map of Paris, right where the awful Fourquois had made the embassy wall explode, and now he was using the compass to draw a series of circles expanding outward from that center, each circle labeled neatly with date and time. "You know what?" said Maya. "She's not actually as terrifying as I thought she was going to be, your Baba Silva." "Ha, ha, ha," said Valco. "If you think she's not terrifying, you just weren't paying attention." "Look, that's the 3,200-meter radius coming up on Saturday." It was a pretty big circle he had just drawn. It stretched halfway across Paris. Maya and Valco stared at it for a while, feeling grim. "The next one's worse," said Maya, since stating the obvious can be satisfying when disaster confronts you. "Wait, let me look at my chart. November 29th at 9 p.m. Draw that one." Valco measured out a pretty impressive distance with the ruler and reached for the compass. November 29. There was something she should be noticing about that date. Maya was sure there was something about dates, about time. But what? The scritchy scales in the other room were making it hard for her to think. Valco was tracing out a vast, vast circle now. "And there goes Paris," he said, as his compass pencil made its enormous circle on the map. "Everything from the Bois de Boulogne to the Père Lachaise cemetery." "A cemetery," said Maya. "Ugh, how weird will that be?" "Stay far away, that's my advice," said Valco. He put the compass down and stood up to get a better view of the map as a whole. "But you know what? We'll find out about cemeteries days before that. There are some other ones in the previous circle. See that there? That's the Cimetière de Montparnasse. And hospitals and stuff. It's all bad." Maya looked at those expanding circles, spreading like ripples across the Paris pond, and the thought she had been missing came zipping back into her mind so quickly she slapped the table with the palm of her hand. "But it won't reach the forest of Fontainebleau," she said. It felt like a discovery. "Will so," said Valco. "You know it will, eventually. Not for a few weeks, though. That's 50 kilometers away, at least." Maya was shaking her head. She was feeling something she was hardly used to these days, a surge of real, actual hope. "No, look! The strangeness won't get there in time," said Maya. "See? That shadow has 40 days to get itself a body again. Think about it. If the strangeness reached the Salamander Rock, where Fourquois was born, where the summer box was hidden, well then, I bet the shadow would be able to magic itself back to life no problem. That's the suitable magical place. But the shadow can't go outside the strangeness, can it? You know, like a fish needing water to swim in. And the strangeness isn't going to get there, not by November 29th, and November 29th is the 40th day." Maya looked up at Valco. "I wonder what happens after that, if we keep him from getting what he wants. You know, like the memory stone and that splotch of blood he left on the paper, which is pretty gross. And me, if he can't get me to sacrifice myself for him, and we can just keep the things he needs out of his reach and somehow slow him down." Valco wiggled the compass back and forth, as he considered the question. "Well," he said, "if the 40 days thing is true, then getting safely to November 30th is like one of our goals, right? But then even if the shadow guy doesn't get his body, what about the strangeness spreading over the whole world? That's still very bad." Pauline Vian's head, that amazing hair, poked through the doorway between the two rooms. "Excuse me," she said, "but you are talking about what in here? Why the maps, and what is strangeness?" Maya and Valco looked at each other. In fact, they had one of those rare mind-reading moments that happen from time to time. Each of them thought at the very same time, could she understand? Why not? Let's try. "Have you noticed the strange things happening in the neighborhood the last few weeks?" said Valko. Pauline frowned. "No," she said. "The explosion that took a bit out of the Bulgarian embassy wall?" "Ah, well then, oui." "The changes in the trees and cars? The shift in the bakeries from croissants to vines and flowers? The remaking of the Eiffel Tower?" "What's wrong with the Tour Eiffel?" said Pauline. "You can't see how different it looks?" said Maya. "You really can't see that?" "Different from what?" said Pauline. "From the little towers they sell for keychains, for instance. Wait, I think James has one in his room somewhere." Maya ducked for a moment into James's room, which was basically a mound of clutter with a bed in the middle, and looked around with quick eyes until a glint of fake bronze found her, a little Eiffel Tower souvenir that had been buried for a few days under dust and dirty socks. "See," she said as she came back into the living room. "Notice anything about this Eiffel Tower? It is not a tree, right? It's just a nice geometrical tower with no leaves or roots." Pauline looked at her as if Maya were the sort of unbalanced person who needed careful handling. "The little Tour Eiffels have never had leaves or roots," she said, explaining the universe to someone with very little sense and less experience or knowledge. "No, it is a tradition that the toy souvenirs look quite unlike the actual Eiffel Tower." "No," said Maya. "Actually, your brain is being fooled. See, this guy who was sort of related to me—" "Henri de Fourquoy," said Valko. "He lived in the Salamander house over near the elementary school. Anyway, he was close to dying, or actually dying, so he did this bad magic stuff by the wall of the Bulgarian embassy." "That was October 20th, said Valko. "The date becomes important later." "And that caused the explosion. But what it really did was open this awful loophole in the laws of physics, so he could go on as a shadow until he could get his body back, which apparently he has 40 days to do." "That part seems really dubious to me," said Valko. "But we have evidence for the laws of physics being warped. It's a pattern, you see. Because 137 hours after he did his loophole magic, I touched the wall he had left his memory in. The strangeness happened again, and that started this chain. And every 137 hours, everything gets strange." "We measured the radius of the affected area," said Valko. "It's doubling every time, so that's really bad." "And we have to stop this from happening. But that's hard, especially since I've been sort of trapped into helping him, like Oedipus Rex bound by fate. But we still just have to defeat the shadow somehow of that Henri de Fourquoy." "Before the 40 days are up." "Which is November 29th at 9 o'clock in the evening." "Yes," said Maya, "that's it. We have to close his loophole, even though we don't quite know how, or else the whole world eventually becomes deformed and wrong and strange, which would be awful." Pauline Vian looked with incredulous and frowning eyes into each of their faces, first Maya's, then Valko's, and then she turned her lips down and gave a very Gallic shrug. "But this is impossible," she said. "In fact, it's absurd." "It does seem totally impossible," said Valko, looking just slightly embarrassed, "but some of it keeps turning out to be true." "Pay attention on Saturday morning," said Maya. "The next round of strangeness happens at 4 in the morning, Saturday. Just see if anything looks changed to you when you wake up. Try to pay attention." "I am always paying attention," said Pauline. You could see that she was intrigued and suspicious both at once. But then she had been made fun of at school more than most, being so small, so out of the ordinary, and so dreadfully, awfully smart. "Well, I will take care to pay particular attention on Saturday. Au revoir, you two." And she swung her violin case around and headed down the hall to the door. Maya and Valko looked at each other. Valko shrugged. "She's kind of right, after all," said Valko. "It's absurd." "Yes, fine," said Maya. "Now focus. We have to figure out how to stop Henri de Fourquoy's shadow from getting itself reborn." "And how to get the laws of physics behaving themselves again," said Valko. He smiled as he said it, though. "Don't forget that. At least it's good you don't have the letter with the bloodstain on it, right? You left that behind. He can't come back to life without a trace of himself. That's what you said." "That's what that letter said, with the recipe, yeah. But what if sitting around and waiting is what the shadow wants me to do? What if anything I do or don't do turns out to be what he planned all along? What if that's what being bound means? It made a person restless around the edges, not knowing what the rules were, and not knowing whether there was any way she, Maya, could break those rules. You could drive yourself crazy trying to figure it all out. How could Maya fight against Fourquoy's evil and shadowy plans if every step she took ended up being just the step he wanted her to take? That was awful. That was the clockwork path, and Maya absolutely hated it. At least she had rescued the egg. Neither the crazy singing ladies nor the shadowy Fourquoy had the memory stone, so that was one good thing, probably. "Why is it good that you have it?" asked Valko. He was still grumpy about that egg. "They wanted to use it to lure me to what they think is a suitable magical place, like where he was born. That was probably the best place for him to come back to life, right? But now we know he can't get there in time, not in 40 days, because the strangeness won't reach that far by then, and the shadow can't go past the edges of his loophole. So now it's me luring them. We just have to find the right place, a sneaky place, somewhere where we can bind him, you know? Not that I've exactly figured out how, instead of him always binding me. Where he won't get to eat my heart after all," Maya added silently, "even if the whole world thinks I'm actually a Zmei." On Saturday morning, Maya slept right through her alarm. She was so worn out, and didn't open her eyes until her father came knocking at her door. "There's a call for you, Maya," he said. "Pauline's on the vine." "What?" She opened the door more or less still in her sleep and took the phone from her father's hands. The vine. The phone had sprouted during the night. Yes, and now she remembered. She had been dreaming of jungles. Long, dark tendrils hung down from every possible side, and it felt oddly squishy to Maya's fingers. "Ugh," she said, "this is disgusting." Her father gave her a puzzled look. "Pardon? What is disgusting?" said Pauline, her voice managing somehow to claw its way through all that excessive vegetation. "This phone," said Maya. "It wants to be a plant." "Ah," said Pauline. She sounded uncertain. "It changed?" "Yes. Oh, that's right. Did you notice?" But, Maya, it is too bizarre what is happening here. I woke up at 4 to see. It was dark, of course, so I took out my violin and played, just to feel better, you see, about everything." "Your neighbors," said Maya, aghast. The Davidsons were regularly getting complaints from the people who lived below them in their building whenever James dropped a toy on the floor, or Maya's father forgot and flushed the toilet after 10 p.m. Practicing violin at 4 in the morning? Hard to imagine what Parisian neighbors might do. "The neighbors, they are far away," said Pauline. "The apartment is not small, you know." "And I have this thing, a surdine, I put on the bridge of the violin that makes it very quiet. But, Maya, I saw strange things. Is this what you are meaning? I saw the back of the chair curl into a roll like a pastry. I saw the pictures change on my walls. It was horrible and bizarre. And I opened my window and I played my violin, you know, to stay calm." Oh, those poor neighbors, thought Maya again, but she tried not to let that thought show. "Quietly I played, my chansons, you know, not scales. And Maya, it was frightening, truly. A shadow came crawling up the wall toward my window." "A shadow?" said Maya. "It was a shadow in the shape of a man. It climbed up as I played, and it was talking to itself. That is not typical, Maya, for shadows, is it?" "No," agreed Maya. "It seemed so angry, if shadows can be angry. It did not want to come, but it kept coming. It was following the music. It said something like that, angrily. And that is not the worst thing. The worst thing is it was whispering your name, Maya. I became disconcerted, to be honest. I closed the window and I put the violin away. There were other shadows out there, too. Dead things, skeletons even. I could feel them, wanting to climb up my wall. It was hideous." "So what happened?" "The shadows went away, you see, when I stopped playing." "Oh," said Maya. She was remembering the way the darkness had come seeping out of the walls on her birthday when Pauline started playing. "Because you were playing that piece, the one about death." "Yes, of course," said Pauline. She sounded a little defensive. "I like it. It's my best, most difficult piece." The funny thing was, she played it so badly. When musicians in myths played their lyres or their pipes and made the wild beasts dance, wasn't it always because the music was so lovely, so exquisite, that not even a tiger could hear it without shedding a tear? Maya smiled into the tangled finery of the telephone. The dead, it seemed, were not so picky. Or maybe they were picky, very picky, but what they picked of all music was the stiff, scratchy wail produced by Pauline. So apparently Pauline Vian did have a musical talent after all. Unlike most people, even those with otherwise impressive musical skills, she could really, actually raise the dead. Because here is what happened next in Maya's apartment. "You know what they said in the bakery this morning, Maya?" said her father when she brought out the dreadfully changed telephone a couple of minutes later. "They said there had been some trouble with the old bones of the Montparnasse cemetery." "What does that mean?" "I guess they usually keep to themselves pretty much. Quiet people, bones. But this morning they had some wild celebration and went rioting after. Madame Lassalle had it from her cousin, who's a baker over that way. Gang of bones broke right into his shop and made off with all his pastries, his vines and flowers, and then headed off this way, or so it seemed to him." "Can bones eat?" puzzled James. "They don't have any tummies." "No, they can't," said his mother, "so it was very rude and greedy for them to go troubling the poor baker." Maya had listened to this much, with distress growing like a weed, a vine, in her. "Excuse me," she said finally, losing some of her cool, "but it's not just that bones can't eat. Bones can't walk. Bones can't celebrate. Bones can't break into shops. They can't do anything because bones are not alive." Silence. "Maya," said her mother, "really, sweetie, that seems very harsh." Maya hardly knew how to respond to that. Harsh? "Yes, actually. This isn't California. It's not nice to come into a different culture and be so critical. It's intolerant, and I won't have it." That in itself was more than surprising, the heat with which Maya's mother spoke. She was so reliably calm and unflustered. But to be reprimanded for not having paid enough attention to the feelings of bones, this was a bitter pill. It stuck in Maya's throat, that pill, and made it hard for her to say anything at all. "Oh, dear," said Maya's mother, putting a hand to her brow. "I just snapped at you, Maya, didn't I? I'm so sorry. I'm not myself these days." "All perfectly natural," said Maya's father. "We can handle worse snapping than that, can't we, Maya?" Maya nodded, but her mind was tackling a new and even more dreadful thought. If her mother wasn't herself, how much of that was due to being pregnant, and how much, perhaps, to the waves of strangeness washing over their household every 137 hours? You weren't supposed to be exposed to chemicals when you were pregnant, were you? Or radiation, or very high altitudes, or kitty litter, or even some kinds of cheese. But what about being exposed to high doses of magic? Maya shivered with worry. It was another reason, on top of a whole mountain's worth of reasons, why she had to make sure that the strangeness went away. To make the world safe for her mother and the, what had she called it? Little bean, Maya absolutely had to slam all loopholes shut and seal the cracks and crevices and make the world leak-free and safe again. She had to. What's more, she vowed grimly, she would.